Up next on U.S. Bank Business Watch, presented by the Cincinnati Business Courier. What kind of voter are you? We'll tell you why a very clear distinction is being made as Cincinnati voters prepare to go to the polls. The old warehouse nightclub in Over the Rhine is now attracting a new kind of young professional. And saying thanks to city leaders who are putting in long hours serving our community for nothing but gratitude. U.S. Bank Business Watch is next. Good morning and welcome to U.S. Bank Business Watch. I'm Peg Rasconi in for Brian Patrick. On the Business Courier front page centerpiece this week, are you a futurist or basic services kind of voter? Those seem to be the defining characteristics of the races for Cincinnati City Mayor and City Council. Some candidates say focus on doing the right things right, while others say focus on bold ideas to move Cincinnati forward. So the question is, who's really going to run this place? 2 years ago, Cincinnati elected 7 Democrats to council, and they pushed big projects forward. 6 backed the streetcar, and 5 supported the parking lease plan. The 2013 council race will determine how the controversial streetcar and parking lease projects run their course, and whether Cincinnati City Council embraces other big and risky ideas. The mayoral race has gotten much of the attention, including a live debate last week sponsored by Local 12.
We have a budget crisis. People aren't going to want to come to this city to invest jobs and grow businesses if they think that our credit's been downgraded. The streetcar adds $4 million minimum on forever when we can't have enough money right now to put enough cops and firefighters on the street. We just can't afford it.
And we talk about attracting young people who will work in some of our leading companies.
We have about a minute and a half
left. They want a certain lifestyle that is not dependent upon an automobile. And so the streetcar is part and parcel of making downtown, Over the Rhine, the communities of Uptown, Clifton, Mount Auburn, Avondale, Corryville, actually competitive.
In addition to the mayor's race, the Cincinnati City Council race will play as much, if not a bigger role, in deciding whether Cincinnati is simply a cute city that competently fills potholes or tries to set a course to become a Midwestern economic powerhouse. Local historian and the host of Local 12 Newsmakers, Dan Hurley, moderated that debate and joins Business Courier editor Rob Dawmeyer in the studio with more analysis on our centerpiece story. Dan and Rob.
Thank you, and thanks, Dan, for being here. You moderated the debate, which was between the mayoral candidates, but our centerpiece story this week kind of focuses on that, but also on the council race, and the idea being that this is a very, very key race because this city at this point can go one of 2 directions. Do you share that idea, and what do you think about this race, not just the mayoral race, but the council race as well, and how important it is, or what it's going to mean?
Well, on one level, you can say that about every election, that there's a lot of momentum that has been created over the last decade or so, especially if you look at the downtown. Important things have been turned around and Over the Rhine, the work that 3CDC has done on the banks. So it's not like we're in this point that it's either choose this or choose that. There's a certain momentum here that's bigger than council, bigger than the mayor, and bigger than City Hall. And the community is behind a certain momentum. So, and the other thing too is I think you have to be careful. The people who, may be for more progressive or whatever, they're also for basic services as well. So it's not an either-or sort of thing. It's much more complicated than that.
Now, as somebody who clearly had to watch and listen to every word during that debate very, very carefully, and the entire campaign, what do you think about the way each candidate is portraying themselves, and maybe how that's coming off to the electorate?
Well, I think there's a really interesting dynamic that emerged for me in the midst of that debate. I realized that every question that was asked, Roxanne Qualls is an incumbent, vice mayor. Her answer always was, here's what we're already doing, and we have to continue to grow that. John Cranley, who's not an incumbent, has been out for a few years, his answer is, they're doing the wrong things. And, so it sounds more aggressive, it sounds more active, and I think there's a dynamic that's set up. Now, it doesn't mean that one's right and one's wrong. It just means that from an optics point of view, there's a difference, and sometimes that plays in. What that means to the electorate out there, do people, rank and file voters, think that the city is got to be turned around somehow? If that's the case, John Cranley really has a lot of support. If they believe it's going in the right direction and are proud of what's been accomplished in the last decade, then it tilts to Roxanne.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to watch this one. Should be close, I think, either way. But Dan, thanks for being here.
Okay.
Peg, back to you.
Thanks, guys. As Cincinnati city leaders prepare to close the deal to privatize its parking meters and garages, our reporter Chris Wederick learned last week that Cincinnati will receive an $85 million upfront payment from the parking lease deal. That's down from the $92 million originally projected. City manager Milton Dehoney says the reduction is related to rising interest rates and a decision not to change enforcement hours in neighborhoods from 6 to 9 p.m. The city will receive the upfront payment along with an annual share of the parking revenues. Dehoney says the city still will receive $3 million a year at the beginning of the deal, an amount he said will grow as time goes on. In addition to interviewing Dan this week, our editor Rob Dahmeyer has a fascinating interview in this week's paper with Terry Lundgren, CEO of Federated Department Stores. Lundgren created the Macy's we know today and has been CEO for the past 10 years. He engineered the $11 billion purchase and the renaming and rebranding of 800 stores under two nameplates, Macy's and Bloomingdale's. Macy's is now a $28 billion national firm based in Cincinnati. Lundgren talked about a variety of topics, including the future of department stores, Macy's online strategy, and the downtown Cincinnati store. Lundgren says our downtown Macy's is, quote, doing well. It's not on my list to close at all. For the full interview, be sure to get a copy of the print edition. We also have a Q&A this week with one of the largest property owners in downtown Cincinnati. Tom Smith just acquired the old Enquirer building on Elm Street and the new headquarters for Cow Brand on Plum, as well as Atrium One. Smith is chairman of Smith Hallam & Partners, a real estate investment company. He's not from Cincinnati, but he's turned into one of our region's biggest cheerleaders.
It's a city that is probably 18 months or so behind some other cities like Nashville in terms of its recovery. But we believe that we're seeing the early signs in Cincinnati of the types of things that have happened 18 months ago in Nashville that are starting to happen here. Companies are looking to take more space. They're looking to grow their business. And all of those things, we believe, lead to economic recovery.
And Smith's business is headquartered in Nashville. Well, yet another grand old over-the-Rhine building is being repurposed. This building at 1313 Vine was a brewery, a beer hall, a union hall, a speakeasy, and the notorious warehouse nightclub. Well, now it's about to become the home of the startup resource Centrifuge.
We identified that there need to be more spaces in town where startups, venture capital companies, mentors can all hang out. It's our Centrifuge Extreme Makeover version, and in about a year from now, we'll be reopening this space in a spectacular part of Over the Rhine.
The space will eventually house a restaurant and workspace that will bring together startups, mentors, and all of the support services for those fledgling entrepreneurs. Centrifuge currently operates out of a temporary space on 6th Street. Well, it sounds a little crazy, but nearly 60 local children recently had the opportunity to careen down a street luge course thanks to Cincinnati-based Pilot Chemical. The company hosted the U.S. national luge team and their search for new members. Pilot Chemical is sponsoring the team for the next 3 years, including the 2014 Winter Olympics in Russia.
The president of our company is a longtime Winter Olympic supporter, and luge being an ice sport and Pilot being founded on our proprietary ice-cold sulfonation process, we felt like that would be a good fit and a good opportunity for us to support a U.S. team.
In the last Winter Games, we're told 8 of the 12 U.S. team members were found through the luge slider search. Well, here's hoping that some of our local kids get the opportunity to participate in advanced training based on those trials. The Business Courier's inaugural Outstanding Directors Awards were recently held and drew nearly 250 people to a black tie event. 8 of the city's top directors were honored for their service, including Frances Barrett, who serves the University of Cincinnati.
All of the trustees are volunteers. We're uncompensated. We only have the best interests of the university at heart, and that means first and foremost to ensure that the students receive a high-quality education, that we have great faculty to teach them, we have a great administration to run the university.
The Cincinnati Business Courier thanks our presenting sponsors Ernst & Young, PNC Bank, and Dinsmore. To view a photo gallery of all the winners, please visit our website, cincinnatibusinesscourier.com. Well, up next on U.S. Bank Business Watch, more expansion plans for Frontier Airlines and a bargain rate if you act quickly. And investing in education that could lead to local jobs in manufacturing. Some news you may have missed if you're not reading the Business Courier online every day. Frontier Airlines, which just began service at Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport in May, will offer nonstop service to Central New Jersey 3 days a week starting February 12th. The service to Trenton Mercer Airport will provide air travelers access to metropolitan Philadelphia. To celebrate the new service, Frontier is offering fares as low as $39 each way through October 20th. Columbus-based Huntington National Bank will expand its Cincinnati operations with the acquisition of Advantage Bank in a deal valued at $97 million. Advantage has branches in Mount Adams, Westwood, Mason, Covington, Fort Mitchell, and Florence. Those locations reportedly had $116 million in deposits as of June 30th, making Advantage the 25th biggest bank in Greater Cincinnati. Steve Stevens is stepping down as the president of the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. Stevens has served 20 years with the chamber and the last 7 as its top executive. He says he's leaving to pursue other professional opportunities but has not set a final departure date. The chamber says it will conduct a national search for his successor. Gateway Community and Technical College is using millions in grant money to beef up its manufacturing programs. This video is from a Gateway College fair held earlier this year. The money comes in the form of a $2.74 million grant from the federal government. The college plans to use the cash to add a logistics training program and grow its manufacturing-related programs. Well, economically speaking, the elephant in the room right now is the federal government shutdown. As we discussed 2 weeks ago, the issue of the rising debt ceiling is coming into focus in a much more serious way. What is the debt ceiling exactly, and why is it the focus of so much attention? Business Courier editor Rob Dahmeyer is back with our very own Jim Russell, U.S. Bank's senior equity strategist for this week's Economic 360. Gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thanks for being here, and I expect to get final answers to solve everything by the time we're done. You ready?
Ready, go.
Debt ceiling is the issue, front and center for everybody, but explain why it's so important, what the ramifications are.
Yeah, Rob, what Congress has done is basically anointed itself as the passer of additional debt for the federal government. The federal government brings in about $7 billion a day, but unfortunately we spend about $10 billion a day, so we have to borrow essentially $3 billion a day. So what the Congress does is set limits onto how much we can borrow. You can see in the graphic that there are limits that are set, and we're at that limit. In fact, we're at that limit as of May of this year, and basically we've shuffled some money around. Now we're out of options. So we're essentially at around $16.7 trillion, and of course all the fuss is about, you know what, can we slow the rate of the growth of the debt? And of course there are opposing views there.
Yeah, and so the dates that have been thrown out have been October 17th, some have said November 1st. Seems like you wouldn't want to mess with that either way, but what's being done to try to fix this right now?
Well, as you know, things are fluid. This is going to be an important weekend for Washington to try to come together, start those negotiations. What do you want? What do we want? So that we can move things forward. The two issues of reopening the federal government and raising the debt ceiling are linked. What we know today is that it looks like that we're going to extend the federal debt ceiling for about 6 weeks, call it November 22nd or so, while negotiations around longer-term deficit reduction can take place. We're talking about things like tinkering with the tax code, corporate taxes, possibly entitlement reform. These are big discussions, and so we need a little bit of time to perhaps think about that. And again, opposing views there.
So big discussions that are going to take a while, but over the next couple days, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, what we think is going to happen is probably we're going to nail down exactly what those parameters are. We've got a bit of a graphic here that shows you where spending occurs at the federal level. You can see major entitlements at 45%, and income security, that's a code word for Social Security. You add those two up, that's 64% of the federal budget. Again, this is what the debate's about. Perhaps the Republicans would like to see a little bit less growth in the entitlement portions of that budget so to kind of rein that debt in. I think maybe the Obama administration would like to maybe look at other areas for cuts, maybe some tax increases as well. So again, I think the role of the government is perhaps mostly at stake here as this debate rolls forward. So what I think happens is crisis is avoided. Federal government perhaps opens as early as next week, maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, and we unfortunately are negotiating for the next 6 weeks. Again, more fireworks.
Yeah, we'll see. You know, it's fascinating, but unfortunately also horrifying.
It's outrageous. No question.
And outrageous, too. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for being with me.
Peg, back to you.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, guys. Still to come on U.S. Bank Business Watch, cheap beer. Need we say more? Okay, the business of cheap beer is next. And congratulations to Chad Yelton, one of our 40 under 40 honorees. Chad is Director of Marketing and Public Relations for the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. He also happens to be an impressive breakdancer. In this morning's Business Insight, we're talking cheap beer. A study by the investment website TheStreet.com ranked the beer for sale at Paul Brown Stadium in a tie for the 6th cheapest beer in the NFL. It listed the Bengals and 7 other teams as offering a 12-ounce beer for $5. Now, if you do the math, that comes to 42 cents an ounce. Business Courier reporter Steve Watkins, though, dug a little deeper into this story and found that they were looking at last year's prices. This year, the Bengals are selling 14-ounce draft beers for $5, so that's just 36 cents an ounce. And that would give the Bengals the 3rd cheapest beer prices in the NFL, barely behind the Miami Dolphins and New Orleans Saints. Now, each of those teams sells beer for 35 cents an ounce. And speaking of affordable beer, Wiedemann's Special Lager has found new life and is one of the lowest priced local craft beers on the market. Former Business Courier reporter John Newberry relaunched the George Wiedemann Brewing Company last year, about 30 years after the original facility in Newport was shut down and demolished. Newberry and his wife Betsy have partnered with the Listerman Brewing Company to create a new recipe for the brand, Wiedemann's Special Lager. He joins Business Watch producer Kelly Leon in the studio with more on his new business for an old Cincinnati name.
Thanks, Peg. John, welcome back.
Hey, thanks. It's good to be back.
You used to be here talking about important business things going on, and now we're talking about beer.
Well, this is very important.
This is very important.
To a lot of people. So.
Why did you do this? You and your wife, Betsy, revived the Wiedemann name. A lot of people in Cincinnati know this name, know this beer. How'd this happen?
Sure. Well, it happened because I used to cover beer, and I found out through my reporting on the beer industry locally that the Wiedemann brand had been abandoned, essentially. They dropped the trademark on it, and I talked to a trademark lawyer and asked him how hard would it be to get that and bring it back, and it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
Yeah, and we've got a shot of it here now. It's a Bohemian-style Pilsner is what it is here. We are seeing a lot of craft beers coming back to life. Greg Hardman with Hudipole.
Sure, sure.
Is this something that's happening just here in Cincinnati, or is this something that's happening all over the country?
No, it's really happening all over the country. There's a lot of old legacy beers with a lot of heritage behind them that people are bringing back. Beer has always been something that people really attach themselves to. Everybody has their favorite beer and remembers, what their dad drank and what their grandfather drank and things like that. So there's a lot of emotional attachment to beers, and I think that's why.
And certainly you're right with Wiedemann. I mean, I remember this as a kid, and it was cheap beer. You don't want me to call it cheap beer, though, right?
Well, it wasn't cheap. It has got a reputation in more recent years as a cheap beer, but Wiedemann was always known as a very affordable beer, a good value. You know, back in its heyday in the 60s and 70s, I mean, it was just a great beer. It was well-marketed, high-quality beer, and that's kind of what we're trying to restore.
So how are you marketing it now? How can people get a Wiedemann beer? Where can we buy it?
Well, in a few weeks, you'll be able to buy it at almost any Kroger store in the Cincinnati, Dayton, Northern Kentucky area. We're finally getting into Kroger, so you can get it there. You can get it at party stores. You can get it at lots of places, Jungle Gyms, all the big beer stores, and fine restaurants and bars all over town.
And what does it go for a six-pack? How much?
It goes for $7.50, $7 in that range.
That's pretty cheap.
Yeah, it's it's a little lower price than than a lot of the craft beers, and that's kind of by design. We like to give people good value, give them a craft quality beer at a good price. I think that's always been kind of Wiedemann's selling point.
All right, well, we wish you well with this. I want to give credit to our director, Todd. He was excited about this story and wanted us to get it on the air. So if you think we're just a business show, just covering boring topics, we proved you wrong this morning, right?
Sure.
Peg, back to you. And it's great to have you here this morning, too, Peg.
Nice to be here, Kelly. It was very interesting. John covered beer, now he's brewing it. So great story. And never boring here on Business Watch. Thank you for joining us this morning for U.S. Bank Business Watch. Brian Patrick will be back next Sunday and every Sunday morning at 6:30 here on Local 12 and at 10 a.m. on the CW. For more business news all week long, you can visit the Business Courier online and sign up for our daily emails. Our address is CincinnatiBusinessCourier.com. And be sure to catch the Bengals game against the Buffalo Bills today at 1 here on Local 12. If you're away from the TV, you could possibly listen to the excellent announcers on the radio. I'm Peg Rasconi. Make it a great Sunday.